Hi there, everyone. Mychal A. Bryan here from the Oraculos School of Astrology, and we're about to dive into the next part of our medical astrology series. And this time, we're going to take a look at an actual client's chart. Now, just for your information, I have anonymized the information on the chart, so the name that we're using is not this client's actual name, but we do have permission to use this client's chart and birth information. So that's what I'll be sharing on today's episode. Also, if you are wanting a full delineation of this chart, you can find that in my book, The New Western Medical Astrology, Pathways Towards the Cosmos and Dwelling, in which I not only discuss this specific client's chart, but I also outline a comprehensive method for addressing medical astrology delineation across the 12 systems of the human body. So, without further ado, let us dive into our chart for today. All right, so the birth chart information for this is April 4th, 1980 at 10:47 a.m. EST in Woodside, New York. When you pull that up, perhaps your software is going to bring up a Woodside Airy versus a Woodside Queens. Choose the Woodside Queens option, and that should give you an ascendant of 15 degrees Cancer, 34 minutes. Now, within my book, The New Western Medical Astrology, you can find the full delineation of this chart in the chapter on the female reproductive system on page 493. So here we have the case history for this client who I've given the name Akeso, and her presenting issue is that she had an experience of unexpected uterine bleeding, which ultimately led to a hysterectomy. So the case history states that on the 3rd of July, 2019, the native experienced sudden unexpected menstrual bleeding, which alerted her to the fact that something was wrong. On December 19th, 2019, she underwent a dilation and curettage DNC procedure in which tissue was removed from the inner lining of her uterus to be tested. On the 5th of April, 2021, she had an in-person exam with a surgeon in which the decision was made for her to undergo a full hysterectomy, which was performed on the 16th of September, 2021. Dates are the most important things that we will ever have at our disposal as astrologers in general, medical or otherwise. So as I was collecting these case histories from clients, I specifically wanted to know as many dates as possible that corresponded with major medical events within their lives, so that I could add that to the case histories within the book. And I think we have over 60 fully delineated case histories in which we have not only the accurate date of birth and the accurate birth chart information for the clients, but in which we also have accurately listed dates for major medical events that correspond with their actual medical condition. So from that perspective, the book is an invaluable tool in terms of simply pointing us in the direction of dates that are important, because once we have dates that are important, we can study those dates from an astrological perspective. Now let us go and take a look at the actual chart. Now, insofar as the female reproductive system is concerned, the first planet that I analyze is always going to be Venus. Now, people would say, Mychal, why wouldn't you analyze the moon first? Because the moon is our womb and the moon is our mother. But practice oftentimes points us in directions that may not necessarily be completely different, but directions that have other nuances that a theoretical understanding alone cannot give us. So as far as I'm concerned, the very first planet that we need to assess in the study of reproductive health concerns is always going to be Venus, because most of the malefic aspects to Venus will manifest as female reproductive health concerns. Let's go through them. Venus-Pluto is a female reproductive health concern that can represent abnormal growths within the uterus. Venus-Neptune, really not representing any female reproductive health concern at all. Venus-Neptune can point in the direction of some larger sugar intolerance, like I spoke about in the previous video, But more often than not, Venus-Neptune can represent a hypofunctioning and underfunctioning within one's overall endocrine system, or an undersecretion of vital hormones that the body needs by which to function effectively. So Venus-Neptune is not one of my astrological constants as far as female reproductive health is concerned. And this term, astrological constant, isn't from me. It comes from medical astrologer C.C. Zane in his medical astrology writings, in which he speaks about the astrological constants, or planetary combinations that tend to show up more often than not in relation to various diseases. So Venus-Neptune is not one of my astrological constants or morbific combinations that corresponds with female reproductive health issues. Venus-Uranus, yes, because Venus-Uranus oftentimes points in the direction of an erratic menstrual cycle, especially in a chart that otherwise points in the direction of an erratic menstrual cycle or some larger female reproductive health issue. Sometimes heavy, sometimes light, sometimes non-existent. Venus-Uranus points in all of those directions. Venus-Saturn, no. Venus-Saturn is not one of my astrological constants as far as female reproductive health conditions are concerned, because Venus-Saturn more often than not has to point in the direction of larger issues that occur within our endocrine system once again. And Venus-Saturn is one of the combinations that we associate with a slow, sluggish thyroid gland, since the thyroid gland is under the auspices of Venus, because the entire region of the body that we call the throat is under the auspices of Venus as well. It's not one of my combinations for female reproductive issues at all. Venus-Jupiter, yes. Venus-Jupiter oftentimes corresponds with benign growths within the female reproductive system, growths that do not have any majorly detrimental impact on the overall constitution of that woman's health, whereas Venus-Pluto more often than not can represent growths that do tend to be more of a traumatic nature. Why? Because Pluto represents abnormal growth, Venus represents the uterus. So when we put Venus and Pluto together, that can oftentimes point in the direction of abnormal growths within the uterus, especially within a chart that otherwise denotes the same. I think it's very important for us always to point out the fact that whenever we speak about any astrological combinations, we are always assuming that we have multiple factors within a chart that also points in that direction, because you cannot build your entire edifice of your house on one brick. Similarly, when it comes to the practice of medical astrology, we cannot build an entire assessment based on one specific planetary combination, because that would be absolutely nuts. So very often the Venus-Jupiter can correspond with an excess of female reproductive hormones within the constitution of a woman, and by extension of that, it is causing the excessive growth of elements or factors, and as a result of that, it's causing the excessive presence of growths that need not be in the female reproductive system, but it's putting them there anyway. So that's Venus-Jupiter. Venus-Jupiter also has other significations in terms of our overall health and well-being, but since we're talking about the female reproductive system, this is how the Venus-Jupiter can sometimes manifest in the female reproductive system. And Venus-Mars is a combination that very often can correspond with heavy bleeding during menstruation, excessive pain during menstruation, and a feeling of there being a battle within one's womb, and as if it feels as if I have a volatile womb. Volatility comes from the Mars, womb comes from the Venus. You put them together, you get a volatile womb baby. The next combination would be Venus-Sun. Whenever any planet is in a conjunction with the Sun in general, the parts of the body that that planet governs, or the systems or the physiological processes in the body that that planet governs, will oftentimes be highlighted within the life of a person. Once again, if you want to know more information about any of these topics, you can pick up a copy of my book, The New Western Medical Astrology, Pathways Towards the Cosmos and Dwelling. If you want to understand medical astrology in the way that I understand medical astrology, then the only book in the entire known universe that can assist you in that endeavor is my own book, because my own book was created out of my own client practice. And I take a lot of pride in that. Similarly, if you all are wanting to study medical astrology with me, you can check out our website at oraculosastrology.com and sign up for any of our upcoming medical astrology programs today, because medical astrology is at the very heart of what we offer here at the Oraculos School of Astrology. We also have an upcoming medical astrology preliminary training, as well as an upcoming medical astrology advanced training. So go and check out our website so that you can jump in on all of the medical astrology magic that we have going on here at the Oraculos School of Astrology. Now, coming back over here to the chart of this lady, whenever a planet is in a conjunction with the sun, the parts of the body that correspond with that planet are going to be highlighted within this person's lifetime. Now, what does it mean when we say highlighted? Whenever anything is highlighted astrologically, the universe is telling you, uh-oh, there might be a bit of a problem. And with Venus ruling the female reproductive system, if this lady had Venus in a conjunction with the sun, we might very well be looking at the female reproductive system as being a part of this lady's constitution that is being highlighted by this chart. Finally, the combination that is most noteworthy within this chart that we do need to be paying attention to is the combination of the final combination that is very relevant in our overall understanding of the female reproductive system. And I dare say the most important combination that is most relevant in our understanding of the female reproductive system is the combination of Moon-Venus. And this is because the combination of Moon-Venus specifically represents the female reproductive system. This combination is really the only combination of planets that we have within the entirety of traditional astrology that specifically in their coming together points towards the female reproductive system. And the reason why I'm speaking about that here is because this native does have the combination of Moon-Venus. Here we have the moon at the Anorectic degree, or the final degree of Scorpio, in an opposition with Venus at the first degree of Gemini. Meaning that if we were to push this moon just 30 more minutes forward into the zodiac, this moon would essentially be moon in Sagittarius opposite Venus. It does not matter where the moon is or where the Venus is. The point is that the hard aspect relationship between the moon and Venus will always denote the female reproductive system within the chart of a woman. Within the chart of a man, Moon-Venus may denote a tendency towards the overconsumption of sugar. But in the chart of a woman, Moon-Venus will 10 times out of 10 point in the direction of the female reproductive system as being a very important highlight within this woman's life. Now, I don't have a uterus, but in the event that I did, if I do have a uterus, and my chart is also shouting out the word uterus, then that means that the universe is pointing towards my uterus as being a part of my physiological constitution that I need to pay more attention to in this lifetime. And the same is true for anything else. So back over here within the chart of this client, we have one indication that the uterus of this native is going to be a major highlight for her within this lifetime. Moon-Venus. Secondly, within this chart, we have yet another combination, not necessarily to the Venus, but to the moon specifically, that points in the direction of female reproductive health concerns. And that is the combination of Moon-Mars. Here we see she has the moon in a Dexter square relationship with Mars. And we know that it's a Dexter square and not a sinister square because Dexter squares and Dexter aspects go against the grain of the zodiac. So from Scorpio to Leo would be moving in a Dexter direction, whereas from Scorpio to Aquarius would be moving in a sinister direction. And the way how I teach my students so that they could remember this distinction between dexter aspects and sinister aspects is by saying that sinister aspects creep up on the planet from behind. So for example, this moon here in Scorpio is in a sinister square with the south node because the moon is essentially creeping up on that south node from behind. That is how we understand sinister versus dexter, because it's a sinister thing to do, to creep up on somebody from behind. Therefore, we have this moon in a dexter square relationship with Mars. The fact that it's a dexter square is really neither here nor there from a medical astrology perspective, because from a medical astrology perspective, the only thing that's important for us to know is that it's a square. Now, some people will want to say to me, Mychal, but this moon has reception because the moon is in the domicile of the Mars, and therefore this square isn't really a true square. This square is actually operating as a sextile, because Guido Bonatti said to me that when planets are forming a square relationship, but by reception, it's as if those planets are actually in a sextile. I don't know if Guido Bonatti was a medical astrologer, first of all. Second of all, within medical astrology, these rules of reception, non-reception, generosity between planets, all of these things that we hold as being classically true within traditional astrology are of no relevance in medical astrology, because medical astrology is a very cut and dry practice. It is hard aspect equals concrete medical event, 9 times out of 10. And if it doesn't equal a concrete medical event, it's going to equal an event within some other sphere of your life that concretely manifests. But hard aspects simply correspond with concrete event, whether there's reception, whether there's mutual reception, whether they're in each other's generosity, whether they're doing anything with each other, it will always equal a concrete event. This is Moon Mars in a square relationship. It equals a concrete event. Dorotheus of Sidon says to us that if a woman has her moon afflicted by Mars, it's one of the indications that she will have to carve the baby out of the womb. Now, that isn't anything I ever say to clients in the 21st century, but as an astrological community, it's something for us to know that Moon Mars is one of the combinations within traditional astrology that signifies a woman having to carve the baby out of the womb. Where do we get this language from of carving the baby out of the womb? We get it from the fact that the moon is corresponding with the womb and Mars is corresponding with this process of carving or cutting. We have the moon Mars, which is one of the combinations that corresponds with cutting the baby out of the womb. It is indeed the original correspondence for cutting or carving the baby out of the womb, which could mean many things from a classical perspective. From a modern perspective, this can manifest as abortions. But beyond that very specific and that very severe manifestation, it also can manifest as it feeling as if there is a war within one's uterus. Just as Venus-Mars could signify a war within one's uterus, Moon-Mars can similarly signify a war within one's uterus. And we see that this lady has this combination of Moon-Mars, not just by hard aspect, Moon in a dexter square relationship with Mars, but she also has this combination of Moon-Mars in the declination table because she has the Moon in a contra-parallel relationship with Mars, which even further alludes to the fact that this is going to be a big problem within the life of this native. Now, the final thing I'm going to say in relation to this Moon Mars is that the moon is at the final degree of Scorpio, which is the Anorectic degree of Scorpio, because the Anorectic degree is the 30th degree of any sign of the zodiac. And we see the moon occupying the 30th degree, which is 29 degrees Scorpio, 35 minutes. Whenever a planet is occupying the Anorectic degree, it denotes a crisis in whatever that planet specifically rules within that birth chart. Now, within this birth chart, the moon is the specific ruler of the first house. The first house represents your physical body. Any house within your natal chart in which you find the ruler of your ascendant is going to be the house within which you are psychically constellating your efforts within this lifetime, which means her efforts are being constellated within this house of her children. Very often within the chart of a woman, when we have the ruler of the ascendant in the fifth house, that can be an indication that fertility-based health issues are going to be issues that she has to encounter within this lifetime, because when we have a planet in a house, we automatically have to ask ourselves, why is that planet in that house? One of the reasons why the moon would be in the fifth house is because that person is having some fertility-based issue from a medical astrology perspective. And the fact that the moon is at the Anorectic degree in Scorpio is a further testament that there could be some fertility-based issue. We know this because Scorpio is the sign of the zodiac that's corresponding with the reproductive system within the charts of both men and women. And like I said previously, when a planet is in a sign of the zodiac and afflicted while in that sign, the part of the body that corresponds with that sign will often also be afflicted. With the moon in Scorpio, we are being pointed in the direction of the reproductive system as being a very important system for us to focus on. And with the moon in Scorpio being afflicted by Uranus, is saying to us that some erratic occurrences within the reproductive system of this woman is going to be something that we need to be focusing on, or something that she needs to be aware of in this lifetime. And with the moon in Scorpio afflicted by the Mars, is saying to us that some inflammation, injury, or some other accident that's occurring within the female reproductive system is something that we need to be mindful of. Now, it is also quite curious and quite important for us to note that this Mars is also the specific ruler of the fifth house, which means that we have the ruler of the first house and the ruler of the fifth house in a square relationship. The ruler of the first house is representing the body of this woman, and the ruler of the fifth house is representing her children. But very often within the charts of women, the ruler of the fifth house also corresponds with that woman's ability to procreate and the overall health of her womb. So in the chart of a woman, if I see the ruler of the first house representing her physical body in a square relationship or a quincunx or an opposition with the ruler of the fifth house representing her ability to have children, that can be yet another testimony to me that the ability to have children will be a very challenging issue for this native within this lifetime. There are other combinations within this chart that also point in the direction of the issues that she has reproductively, but I think it is sufficient for us to look at these major combinations, the combination of the moon opposite the Venus, the moon at the Anorectic degree of Scorpio in a square relationship with the Mars, the fact that the moon is ruling the physical body of this woman and that the Mars is ruling the children of this woman, and also the fact that this moon is in a conjunction with Uranus in the fifth house while being in the sign of Scorpio at the Anorectic degree in a square relationship with Mars. What's interesting about this lady's chart is that she started off by saying that she had sudden unexpected bleeding, and if we were to put together an astrological combination that specifically denotes sudden unexpected bleeding, it would be the combination of Mars-Uranus, which we find her having an exact relationship between these two planets within her chart as well. All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining me here in this delineation of this natal chart from a medical astrology perspective. I really love doing this work, and I sincerely hope that you all have learned something from this broadcast today. Once again, if you want to practice medical astrology in the way that we practice medical astrology here at the Oraculos School of Astrology, you can pick up a copy of my book, The New Western Medical Astrology, Pathways Towards the Cosmos Indwelling. Almost 700 pages of pure medical astrology goodness that comes directly from our research here at the Oraculos School of Astrology and nowhere else. So please do grab yourself a copy of this book. And as you all know, I'm a self-published author, which means if you can take 2 minutes out of your day to just go on Amazon, if you've already purchased the book and you've loved the book, to please go on Amazon and write us a review for the book so that other people can also know what your experience is, but also so that the algorithm can push the book out towards a larger reading audience. Also, please make sure to check out our website at oraculosastrology.com, where you can join us in any of our upcoming medical astrology courses. We have an upcoming medical astrology preliminary course, as well as a medical astrology advanced course, as well as our medical astrology diploma program, all of which is coming up quite soon. So please make sure you go and check out our website so that you can join those courses if those are things that speak to your heart, or if medical astrology is something that you want to integrate more fully into your life. We're going to keep on coming out with these videos of me interpreting and delineating these medical astrology charts in the upcoming weeks. So if you want to be a part of the live studio audience for these delineations, then please make sure to sign up now by visiting our website at oraculosastrology.com, where you can sign up to be a part of these events as well. And as always, please like and subscribe to the Oraculos podcast wherever you find us on the internet, so you can keep your finger on the pulse of all of the wonderful astrology that we bring to you on a weekly basis. Until next time, I'm your host, Mychal A. Bryan, leaving you in peace and love and hope. Until we meet again, have a good one. Bye-bye.